Bruce, how are you?
Good, thanks. I've got an interesting theme this week.
Yep.
It's on the theme of geology, but wherever you are, there's going to be some local geology. So our theme is looking at our local geology really around Ballarat.
And there's, I suppose, more things than we kind of associate Ballarat, particularly with gold, but there is more to it than gold around here, isn't there?
Yeah. It's certainly an amazingly interesting area, because not only do we have gold, but we also have volcanoes.
Ah, of course. Yeah.
So, they're remnant volcanoes, but they're actually dormant. And geologically speaking, the last one that erupted in this part of Victoria was only about 10,000 years ago.
Is that Mount Buninyong?
No. Mount Buninyong was 2 or 3 million years ago, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
There have been volcanoes in Western Victoria for millions of years, but it's also been an active time, geologically speaking, fairly recently.
So that means if that only 10,000 years ago, there would have been people here in Victoria, the original indigenous inhabitants would have been around when the last volcanoes were erupting. Yeah,
and apparently there are still some stories that have been passed
really?
on. Yeah, which link back to that time.
That's extraordinary. Isn't it?
No, it
to
is,
know that there's a sort of cultural memory of volcanoes erupting in Victoria. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think really, I did say 10,000 years ago, but I think it's even more recent than that the last volcano did erupt. So geologically speaking, it's still an active time, and if you talk to a geologist, they'll probably say, well, there could be another
any
one.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So gold, first of all, I suppose when everyone thinks of Ballarat, that's the first thing they think of. So you're going to talk a bit here about gold. Oh, there's a nice bit of gold and some quartz there.
Yeah, I know. It's gold's the most beautiful thing, isn't it? And it's just it's got all these amazing qualities, and I want it to be a good thing to ask your students, what are the qualities about gold that make it so valuable and so desired? But in Ballarat, we get gold that's come with quartz reefs originally.
Yeah.
And that's the most that is the way that gold has come to be in Ballarat. Gold is a material, it's a metal which is beneath the Earth's crust, along with all the other molten materials that are beneath the Earth's crust. But in certain conditions, it'll come with the quartz and crystallise with the quartz, and we just happen to have those right conditions around Ballarat and other areas. And
had an enormous amount of gold, really, by world standards. Really, I mean, Ballarat would have been one of the richest cities in the world, I would imagine, in the mid 19th century.
That's right. Yeah, it's famous for it, and people came from all over the world to come to the goldfields in Ballarat.
And I guess the way people find gold too, it's based on one of the properties of gold, which is it's actually a very dense metal, isn't it? And so that's one of the main ways that people find gold, is by using that property, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's right. Initially, because it's so dense, what it does is that as the landscape erodes and eventually it erodes and a lot of the material washes down into the creek beds, that's where they found the first gold, and that is called alluvial gold, because it's just been gold that's washed down into the riverbeds, and people would walk along and see it in the riverbeds amongst all the pebbles and that.
That's amazing, isn't it? And that's where I suppose most of the gold mining here would have started, wouldn't it? It would have been people panning for gold or using those cradles in the riverbeds. And in fact, they still do it, don't they? I know people will go down to the Yarrawee Creek and go panning for gold and still find stuff.
Yeah, look, I've been out Creswick panning in recent years, and there's a little spot out there.
Yeah,
I'll tell you one, mate.
Tell us where it is.
Yeah, nearly got me. But where you look for a spot where there's a bit of a grey lead going through the clay, and that crosses a creek, and you can be pretty confident that there's it's called an indicator. If there's an indicator in the ground there, it can indicate where gold can be found. There are creeks around that we can still find specks of gold, and we hear also about people prospecting around Ballarat and finding gold.
But not all of it's found on the surface. There is, I mean, there's still underground mines here and in places like Bendigo, which are still operational too.
That's right. And if they're looking underground in what used to be old riverbeds, that's called a deep lead.
Yeah.
And so they look for gold in. Some of the mining that originally occurred in around Ballarat was looking for these original riverbeds.
Yeah.
Because around Ballarat, we've got these volcanoes, and the volcanoes did flow over the landscape and cover up the original rivers.
And that's pretty dangerous sort of mining too, from what I understand, deep lead mining as well.
Yeah. Well, you've got to get down there, don't you? And often you have to go through the old volcanic lava flow, which is now a solid basalt thing, and you have to get through that, and you've got to blast your way through that.
Yeah.
And that's incidentally why Ballarat has so many Crimean names, because the Crimean War was on at about the same time in the 1850s as Ballarat was exploring gold. So we had these people coming back and hearing all these explosions as people tried to bust their way through the basalt lava flows, which reminded them of wartime in the Crimea.
Sebastopol.
Sebastopol.
Yeah.
Yeah, Malakoff Street.
Yeah.
Nightingale Street.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Redan is another word for the
that's
Crimea.
right. Yeah.
There you go. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's looking for gold. So far we've talked about finding alluvial gold and deep lead gold, and that's both either in current or former riverbeds, but it did originally come up, as I mentioned earlier, with the quartz from the molten magma and material beneath well beneath the Earth's crust, and crystallised. So the third main way around Ballarat is to actually look in these quartz reefs and find the gold that's still stuck in with the quartz.
All right.
And that's also very dangerous mining as well, because a lot of that where the quartz reefs have come in, that it's come into a lot of sedimentary material, and a lot of that material, particularly with the quartz in it, can be quite just breaks very easily. So it's very difficult, dangerous to build a tunnel in it, because it can just fall down on you. And so a lot of the mines around Ballarat that were looking for these quartz reefs had to actually be very careful that the mine didn't actually collapse on them. There's a story about that, isn't it? The birds, the tweeting birds.
I don't know. You've got me. We might have to do a bit of research on that. And
there's some little animal they used to take down that into the mines.
And they could hear the fractures occurring
before we could.
So kind of like the canaries in the coal mine, but different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if it was canaries?
I don't know.
I might be.
Oh.
Anyway, so there you go. Gold around Ballarat, an amazing story, and a lot of in your locality there may have been mining of something as well. But you can always, it's so important, the gold rush in Ballarat for Australia.
Well, one of the outcomes too that perhaps people might not have thought about too is that the discovery of vast quantities of gold in Australia effectively also signalled the end of transportation, because people suddenly saw us coming to Australia as an opportunity rather than punishment.
Right.
So
that's right.
You'll find there's a very good correlation between these opportunities in Australia, particularly in Ballarat and then in Bendigo, and people wanted to come to Australia. It was a place where, as you say, there was a lot of people associated with the Crimean War, but also the place names around here like Yankee Flat Road and Durham Lead and Canadian show all the different parts of the world that people came from. So it was a really interesting social experiment, the gold rush, apart from anything else.
You got right onto a really good project there. Looking at street names and working out the history associated with those street names.